Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the next session of the mentor series with EMxEG and event grads. I'm really excited today to be joined by Fiona MacKinnon because Fiona is my own mentor, so I think this is going to be a really wonderful discussion. And I've heard some of the stories before and I'm looking forward to delving deeper into Fiona's journey within events and journey within hospitality. And I'm excited for all of you guys to hear it as well, because it really is an exceptional journey and I'm really excited to just be able to kind of learn a little bit more about this area and sector of events, because within event education, or when you've come into events for the first time, it might not be something that you have got to know or understand what really goes on behind the scenes within business events. So yes, thank you everyone so much for joining. So hi Fiona, how are you today?
Hello, I'm very well, and I'm delighted that you're my mentee because you're fabulous, and I didn't do half the things you're doing at your age.
It was all by accident.
It was beautiful.
Oh no, we're so pleased to have you, and thank you so much for your time. I think after the kind of year that we've had in terms of hospitality and events and tourism, you work for Visit Scotland, which in Scotland is a very big organisation. It's involved in a lot of the event and hospitality and tourism sector within events. And I was saying before, within Scotland, sorry, and I was saying beforehand, I'm not actually quite sure in like England and Wales and Ireland and any other places how, like Visit Britain, for example, how integrated they are, because I'm obviously not in England myself, but it'll be interesting to kind of, for those that maybe aren't from Scotland and know so much about Visit Scotland, to maybe hear a little bit more about what kind of work Visit Scotland does and what you do as well.
No problem at all. So let's start at the beginning. So my own sort of roundabout journey has brought me to Visit Scotland at sort of this stage of my career. The organisation as a whole is obviously the National Tourist Organisation, so we're here to attract tourists to Scotland. That's the primary function of the organisation. The part that I belong to is the Events Directorate, and that is really a very small part of what the overall company does. So within the company and the sort of floor, well, when we were in the office, the floor of the building I work on, we're a tiny, tiny, very specialist arm of what the tourist board does. But everything interlinks, and I think that's the kind of key of everything, that everything is a partnership. So you're always working with different people, different bodies. So the tourist organisation is purely about marketing Scotland to all corners of the world. So whether it's Singapore, so to the Asias, Americas, Europe, bringing people here, making people want to come to Scotland. On the event side, it's split very much into, I'd say, kind of three main areas. The side I work in is probably the easiest to explain. So business events are where either an organisation is bringing an event here, a corporate company, or you'll know it as mice business. So meeting and incentive travel. So anyone, if you were, say, IBM or whatever, and you're having a staff event, you're having a shareholder event, you're having a engineers conference, whatever it might be, and you're looking for a location. So part of my team works on that side of the business. Incentives are very specialist as well, and that's massive, massive business for Scotland. So they're smaller. It could be between about 10 and 50 people. They might be coming from Germany, from Holland, from America, from Mexico, anywhere in the world. And these are people that have excelled in their own organisation. So perhaps they work for a car company, say Ford Motor Company. Don't know why I thought about that one, but whatever. And they've been their best sellers. It's usually salespeople or the best distributors or something like that. And they win an award within their company to go on this all expenses paid trip. And these are experiences that people can't buy off the shelf. So it's considered very special. It's really big now in the Asian market, but for Scotland, we're not such a good fit because they want to bring 500-600 people at a time and have a very exclusive experience in a castle, and our castles just aren't that big. But that's a very high-end, lucrative side of the business for Scotland. And a lot of our agencies, our DMCs, destination management companies, their whole business is in incentives, and they are filled day after day after day. It's really busy side of the business. The particular side that I work in, I personally think is the most interesting, but it's not everybody's taste, is I work with associations and sectors. So our side is bidding for business. We will look at what might fit with Scottish Government's aims. So say at the moment the big one is obviously renewable energy, carbon, all of the green sustainable areas. You've probably heard, some of you, that COP26 comes to Glasgow in November this year. That will be the biggest event, if it does go ahead face to face, that has ever been held in Scotland. So it's an event that is about a topic that's really of interest to the country, and we work to bid for it to bring it here. Now that one's slightly different because it's actually organised by UK government, so that's a slightly different example. But we bid for events. So say this one it's all long term. So maybe something's coming up in 2024, 2025. You'll be bidding for it sometimes 8 years in advance, sometimes 4 years in advance. And it's a bit like going for the Olympics. So everybody puts their bid in, you do a presentation, and there's no silver, there's no second places, there's no silver awards. You either win it or you don't. And if you don't, you're on to the next one. Or you're rebidding it for it maybe 4 years ahead. And it's a complex side of business events, but it's very lucrative for the country and the destination. So, for example, COP26, if the estimated 30,000 people come into Scotland, into Glasgow, across to Edinburgh, the business that brings to Scotland is massive. All of those people flying in, accommodation, eating out, going on trips, doing different things while they're here, as well as the really important thing that interests us, which is what's being discussed while they're here and how can that benefit Scotland long term. So sometimes it's called legacy, sometimes it's called, there's different words for it, but it's about making us future-proof, if you like, putting Scotland on the map for those particular topics. So it gives a platform for inward investment and for an ongoing dialogue within those particular topics. So whether it's bioscience, engineering, sustainability, whatever the topic might be, and there are associations for everything. So there are student associations, there are university associations. You'll all be part of associations in one way or another. Whatever somebody decides to do in their working life, they kind of head towards other people doing the same thing. So if it was, trying to think of what I'm doing recently, so say a space one, it might be the European Space Agency's event. People who've chosen to work in the space industry, whether you're an astronaut, an engineer, whether you sell space products, whether you research, whether you make things, you all come together at that conference. So it talks about research, what's happening, what's the next big thing. And it brings together that platform where people meet and have those discussions. So associations I find personally fascinating because of what they can do and what they bring to a country. But sorry, I get carried away because I get too involved with that one topic. That's a small part of what Visit Scotland does. The other side of the business you might be more familiar with, which is Event Scotland supports mostly festivals. So sorry, what I should say as a generalisation is business events is invitation. You're either a member of the association, in which case you get invited to attend the conference, or if it's for a corporate company, it's for employees or it's for stakeholders, but they're invited to come. It's not open to the public. You can't just go along and decide you want to go and see what they're talking about. The other side of the business for Event Scotland is public facing. So festivals of all sorts, whether it's a book festival, a music festival, there are all sorts of different topics. And also the more of the creative side, so the Edinburgh Festival, the jazz festivals, all of that sort of side, and sport's huge business, as you'll know. So Scotland, we're very renowned for our golf business. We are known as the home of golf, and golf business for Scotland, the Solheim Cup, which came a couple of years ago. These events are huge. They're also bid for, and there's a fee to pay. So Scotland pays a fee to bring those events in. And my colleagues in Event Scotland work with the bidding teams to go up to attract those events to Scotland. And again, as a destination, as a country, they're very lucrative for us from a financial point of view, and also to put our own sport on the map. So there's a kind of a reason behind it. It's not just what dates do you want and when are you coming and how many people are you bringing. There's a whole industry built up behind it, as you'll know. And in terms of the supply chain that works across all these events, it covers everybody. So the people that put up marquees, the people that bring the toilets, the people that do the catering, the sound guys, the lighting, every event is multifaceted with the amount of people that come in and are part of it, whether it's flowers, whatever it might be. Even a simple, awards dinner or something of that type, you'll have multiple suppliers being involved as part of that event. So some of the event jobs that are out there, there's such a massive variety, but you could just specialise in one area and that's what you do your whole working life. Or you can try out lots of different things and think, that's a good fit for me, that's not. And you all know when you do things, what fits you personally and what doesn't. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what the Events Directorate does. So it's three main areas: business tourism, which I work in, which also has its own specialisms, which I hope that's being sort of clear about how I've outlined it. Then there's the Event Scotland side, which is festivals and sport predominantly, and some other things in the mix. There's a huge event called UCI Cycling, which is coming to Scotland in 2023. And a first time ever, Visit Scotland actually has its own offshoot company who'll organise that, which has its own CEO, its own directors, because it's so enormous. It's the biggest event in the sporting world that Scotland will have ever put on, even bigger than the Solheim Cup Commonwealth Games that have been here before. So as a country, we have a really good track record of attracting these big events. And the reason for that, and I think, Naomi, what you wanted me to talk about was how it works here. In Scotland, we're really well connected. Visit Scotland is a bit of a hub. So we have specialist people, so myself and associations, other people in their own areas of speciality. They know the contacts, they know the supply chain, and they know what they want to achieve, and everybody works together. It's completely partnership led. No one element can work in isolation. Everybody works together. So you'll often have government buy-in. You have to know who to go to in government. You have to know who to go to in sectors. If you want to put on a massive event like the Commonwealth Games, like the Solheim Cup, it takes everybody to be involved in making that happen. If somebody says no, or says you can't use my land, or you can't do this, you can't do that, you don't have an event. So it's a lot of background work that goes on. And every event, as you'll know, has a beginning, a middle and end. So there's the bidding for it. That's the exciting bit in a way. Then when you win it, you sort of go, oh shit, we've got to actually make this happen now. And then there's a whole load of work that goes on for the next 4 years, whatever the lead-in time is. And then afterwards is the lying down, but also working out that the legacy you wanted to achieve and all of those KPIs, if you like, from a corporate perspective, have come to fruition for Scotland, and that we've got something out of it. Because we're Scottish. We like to get every ounce of something. It's not just great, you were here, you had a lovely time, bye. You're making partnerships, you're cementing relationships that you then go on and keep. It's about, I think the key to the business for me is it's long-term relationships. So you build your networks, and people you might have worked with 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you might suddenly need them for something else way down the line when you're doing a different job. Everyone's important. Everybody that you meet now, that you come into throughout your career, you can do something for them, they can do something for you. And that's in my eyes what it's all about, and what makes us quite successful in this really competitive world. And there's nothing nicer than the feeling when you bid for an event and you win it. Especially if you're in Scotland and both Glasgow and Edinburgh are up for it, because their old rivalry is very fierce. And if you win against your competitor, it's a sweeter victory. But when you lose, you just have to go, okay, that one wasn't meant to be. Go very zen-like and move on to the next one. But you keep the contacts, and everybody moves around. So that client might end up being somewhere else. You might end up working somewhere else. Nobody stays static. So your contacts stay with you. So I hope I didn't waffle too long on that one, but I hope that gives you a grounding on how it works in Scotland, that it's the connectivity, it's how everybody works together, has relationships, everybody works to their own strengths. And nobody knows everybody and nobody knows everything, but you need to know who to go to. Who's the man that knows? Who's the man that can get you access to whatever it might be that you need? And that's, I think, the key. That's what you need to do for success.
Amazing. I just think it's really interesting as well to kind of understand or get that kind of behind the scenes look of what not just goes on behind like Visit Scotland, but a lot of other organizations that do similar things. Like you come out of maybe, you've entered the industry and you're like, I want to do this one thing, or I want to do this, say it was festivals, because I feel like that is it's one that's very easy to kind of get your head around. You come out of uni, you're like, I want to do festivals, but there's so much within that. And then when you look at the industry in general as a whole, and that industry development side of things, there's so much more than just what you see at face value in regards to, oh, I'm going to do a conference, I'm going to do a festival, I'm going to do a wedding. With business events as well, I think it might not be as well known as understood what business events and that sector in itself almost is about. So that was a really, really interesting kind of lowdown of what all goes on behind the scenes and how an event actually gets to a country. Because if you came in, not like, do many people know that? I don't know. I probably didn't at all. But for those of us in at GCU who went to my university, for example, we knew Scotland the Perfect Stage, the national event strategy, off by heart. I'm sure Cameron probably did as well. That is what we studied at university. It was very much like, how do we make Scotland, that perfect stage, and you've pretty much gone through that whole process on how an event can get to the place it is. Because for a lot of those not in the industry as well, it's very much like, oh, an event's there, and it's like, how do I get tickets to this event? And that's the one facet they see of the whole intricate system of what goes on. So that was a really amazing kind of overview of what you do and what Visit Scotland and the organisation does. So thank you very much for that.
I think the other thing to mention is that everybody thinks business events are really boring. But actually, I mean, I've worked in them for years and I still work in them because they're not. They're brilliant people. It's always about the people. The clients are really good fun. And again, there are layers, there's agencies, there's middlemen all the way through everything. And you're always working with different people who are really great. Like the tech guys are brilliant, production company guys are great. Everybody's quite fun to work with. It's not as dry as you might think. And association, you think, oh God, it's all medical people or whatever, but it isn't. And sometimes the most, what you think might be a really boring subject, they're absolutely fascinating. And what they talk about is absolutely mind-blowing. And you meet amazing people doing incredible things. I often have meetings with people and I just feel really stupid because I think, okay, you're going to save the world, you're going to do this, what do I do? But then they need my skills because they don't know how to do the bit I do. So everybody's a piece of the jigsaw. But you do come across amazing people doing incredible things that you never thought about.
That's a really good point. You're learning on the job as well, aren't you? In that sense, you're getting, it's again the variety of events. Yeah. Something you did mention though, I don't think, oh, there's a fly, nice. I don't think there's been one mentor series that hasn't spoken about toilets. So just yeah, one takeaway from the whole mentor series in general is toilets are important, and don't go all of Fire Festival out and forget the toilets. But absolutely. So the next the question that I have next is kind of taking things right to the beginning, and we'll probably see the process of how you got to the position that you're in now, and gain that kind of experience and expertise through that to succeed so well within the role that you're in at the moment. So what made you join the event industry?
Well, I wasn't as lucky as all of you. In my day, there weren't courses. You couldn't go and study. They just didn't exist. So the only one, and basically, like most people of my time, you just fell into it. I didn't know what a conference was. I didn't know what a business event was. I hadn't got a clue. I just thought a hotel was somewhere you went for a drink. So my own entry into the business, if you like, was I was meant to be a primary school teacher, but I never passed my maths, and I still can't add up. So I ended up I went to Napier and I did business studies and tourism, which was the closest I could kind of get. I probably applied because I liked holidays. I don't even remember why I thought about it. I had the grades and I just went for the course. Studied at Napier and I quite enjoyed the course, and then I went off to be a holiday rep because I just wanted to have fun. That was always my goal, and it still is all these years later. I just wanted to do something. We all spend a lot of time at work, so I wanted to spend my time doing something I would enjoy doing. So I was a holiday rep in the south of France for a few years, absolutely had a ball. Still in touch with people I worked with in those days. We just, and I learned to hustle a bit. You know, you sold everything. We used to sell trips and all sorts. I probably shouldn't say that, especially when it's been recorded. But you learned to deal with people. So if the weather was bad, you had the people going, oh, what are you doing about the weather? And you just learn to deal with problems. You learn to deal with annoyed people. I had to take people to the doctor, to the dentist when things went wrong with them. My French wasn't that great. You just had to you had to just not quite fake it, but you had to just be responsible, or at least sound as though you were responsible, even though you didn't really know what you were doing. And that was actually, when I look back on it now, it was quite a good grounding in just how to deal with people. I then ended up in London in between seasons at some point, and I just fell in with a flat that I had access to, and I answered an ad in the paper on the London Underground one day, and it was for a company that sold theatre tickets. I thought, well, that sounds like a laugh. I like the theatre. So I did the theatre job, and it was mostly out of work actors that worked there. And from there, the company was a much bigger place. It was called Keith Prowse Tickets. I don't think it exists anymore. And so we used to sell tickets for Michael Jackson, Madonna, all the big names at the time. And then I ended up on the accommodation side. So they had another arm of the business which sold accommodation for people attending events. So if you were going to Crufts or you're going to one of the really like Horse of the Year show, we sold the bedrooms that went with it. This is before Google, you know, there was no online booking. They would call up companies like the one I worked for, and they would make bookings through that. We used to type up the confirmations and send it off with carbon paper. And then from there, I didn't know they had another arm of the business, which was conferences. So somebody said at one point, oh, you'd probably be quite good at conferences. Why don't you go? Why don't you apply? There's a job up there. Didn't know what it was. And I just landed on my feet. I ended up working for a conference agency where we would literally find venues for people's events. So it might be a music company looking to do a recital, it might be a corporate company doing an away day, whatever they were wanting to do, we would find venues for them. And it was a brilliant training because, again, there was no Google, you couldn't look anything up. So a bit like training as a taxi driver, you literally just had to learn. So my party piece for years was you could name any place in the UK and I could reel off every single conference venue, what the capacities were, and what that was suitable for, what kind of clients it was suitable for. I can't do it now, I'm out of date. But you just learned, you just had to learn it all. And you had to answer the phone in 3 rings or you got called into the supervisor's office. It was amazing training. And the 2 ladies that I worked with, and it's always good to work with people that you admire, is something I would say to you all. I've learned that a lot. There's people I look back on now and think, I learned so much from you, but I didn't realise it at the time. So I had excellent training in customer service. Customer always came first. You were polite. You dealt with, you anticipated their needs and you tried to exceed it. So I did that for a few years, and I lived in London, and there was all of us who worked for that company. Nobody was from London. We were all from somewhere else. It was the early 80s. It was a hoot. It was a really sociable job. As part of our contract, we had to go and stay in 5-star hotels every weekend or every second weekend. We had to go out for dinner somewhere. I think it was a Tuesday and a Thursday night. You had to go for dinner. So dieting was always an issue, but it was amazing. So I got to know these places, knew all the GMs by name, knew all the salespeople, and it was a great way to network and just be known in the industry. And then I moved back to Scotland. I can't remember exactly when. I probably did that job for about 3 or 4 years, and then wanted to move back to Scotland and took a job in academic venue. So Heriot Watt at the time had a year-round conference centre. It's how they were making money for the uni. And I did sales for them. So I didn't apply for sales. I didn't think I could be a salesperson. I wasn't interested in that. And I think I went for an events job and they turned me down. And then they came back a week later saying, we didn't want you for that, but we think you'd be good in sales. So also when you go for a job through your career, the person interviewing might think, oh no, they're not right for this. But they do sometimes come back to you and go, actually, we think you'd be a good fit with this team or whatever. So I wanted to come back. So I took the job in sales. And I think the girl who employed me went off maternity leave and the other one left. So I was literally on my own. I had to do everything. But at the time, that was the biggest venue in Edinburgh. The EICC hadn't been built. The hotels didn't have the massive capacity. So whenever I went to do promotions, do events, events where I was meeting clients, I used to come out with all of these inquiries in my pockets. I always had more inquiries than anybody else. So again, I started dealing with really amazing clients and fantastic events. And again, I just learned on the job. It was a bit of a baptism of fire, but it was great fun. And from there, I think because I had London experience, because I had big venue experience, and then just started a period of my life where I just got approached for jobs. I didn't apply for anything for years. So Glasgow Convention Bureau approached me. They wanted an international sales manager. And I think at the time, I've said this to Naomi, your life is one thing. So I used to think it's your work and it's your home. And then when I look back now, I realise, well, I did that because I split up with that boyfriend. I did that because that happened in my life. Things happen and you just have to go with it. So I think I fell out with my boyfriend, or we split up for 5 minutes. I took the job in Glasgow, booked a holiday for New Zealand, and then we got back together and I had to commute to Glasgow for about 3 years. Still had the holiday in New Zealand. But the Glasgow job was great because I travelled extensively. So once a month I'd be in the US. I was all over Europe. It was a time of my life when I had time to travel and do it when you're young. I had free, I didn't have a family. It was great. So I was all over the place and I loved it. But like everything that you do, you can end up doing a bit too much. So I ended up being away when all the parties were on here. So it can get to, but if you do a lot of travel, it can be a bit of another suitcase, another location, another airport. Now I really miss it because I haven't been anywhere for a couple of years. So I did a lot of travel in that job, got to see a lot of other parts of the world, dealt with a lot of different clients from different places, and that gave me a really good international perspective. And I knew at that point, the only time I ever knew, right, I want to do this move, is I wanted to work for the EICC, which was due to open in Edinburgh, I think the next year or a couple of years ahead. I didn't get in the first couple of times I applied, but I did get in third time. So don't ever give up. There's something you think, that's what I want. I can see me there. I can see me doing that job. And you get knocked back. Just keep going. Other jobs come up. So I think third time lucky I got in there, and I was part of their pre-opening team for, I think I worked there for about 5 or 6 years. And that was the best job. One of the best jobs I ever did. It was pre-opening, we had huge budgets, we travelled the world telling people about why they should bring their events to Edinburgh. It was an amazing team of people. We were all young, we were all learning on the job. Most of us were managers for the first time. We used to pass a book round, it was 5-minute manager. How do you tackle your staff issues? You know, so don't ever think that people that are managing you know what they're doing, because quite often they don't. And so we all learned, and we learned together, and it was a work hard, play hard, which the events business is anyway, and that's actually one of the things I like about it. So I made lifelong friends, as I have in most jobs I've done, because we'd work really hard, we'd fly around the world together, we travelled together, and then we'd party hard together, and it was an amazing job. And we were so proud of the venue. If any of you think sales might be your future, it wasn't what I thought I would ever do, but only go for places you would be really proud to work for. If you go in half-hearted, your clients will know. And I have had jobs where I've thought, I don't really think this is very good. Their service is shit. And then you need to go. It's not, you can't represent something you don't 100% believe in. But the EICC, I was very proud to work there. And then I did actually go back again when they opened their new space. I went back for about another 3 or 4 years later on in life. So did the convention bureau, worked for the academic venue. I did EICC. I then had a family, so I didn't really want to work full time. I didn't want to. I couldn't travel, so I did I worked for local hotels. I wanted to be based here, and that's the nice thing. If you do an international job, but you want to be based in one place, if your life or your other things in your life are in one location, think carefully about how it's going to work for you. So I then worked for hotels. I would do all their events for them, their client events, and I would work part-time. Did part-time for years. And then when my children were a bit older, I went back to the EICC full-time when they opened their new space. And then I went back to another job, which I think I'd been one of the local hotels. I went there again as a director of sales, which I didn't really like. And then I ended up with Visit Scotland, which is where I am now. So don't let anyone tell you have to stick with one thing and do it your whole working life. I don't think I've ever stayed anywhere more than about 5 years. And over 30 years, that's been fine, because we get bored and you need to be challenged, you need to do different things, and you need to sort of be pushed a little bit. If you get too much into your comfort zone, I don't think you always give your best. So you don't have to just stick with one thing. And you can try different things and find out it works for you, it doesn't work for you. I think that's absolutely, certainly worked out for me. Nobody thinks badly of you. Daisy, to answer your question about children, it's not the most forgiving industry for children, but my personal experience was, when the kids were a certain age, I did much lower paid jobs, but I wanted the part-time hours. So you come to a point where you have to make a decision. Do you want the job or do you want the money? And I've never found anyone who's managed both. Or you don't see your children. So the jobs are there. The part-time jobs I did with the hotels were great fun, and I really enjoyed it. And I used to work school hours. Some of them I worked school hours. And it worked out brilliantly for me, but I was on very low salaries. And I did have one director of sales who said, it's amazing, we pay you peanuts, but you do all these things that I'd pay somebody senior to do. And I remember sort of thinking, I used to sit in a desk opposite and thinking, who's got this wrong? But the hours suited me, and that was the life I wanted. So you'll come to different points where you need to make decisions. And I currently actually work with a couple of colleagues who are trying to balance jobs with young children where they really should travel and do things, and I can see they get conflicted. So choose carefully. I don't know that you can have both easily unless you've got really good childcare, but everybody finds their way, if that helps. And then you can always come back to it later.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was so amazing. It's just great to hear everyone's different routes, and now that you're at a stage where you can look back and be like, oh, that was meant to be. Or because I think at times, especially maybe as a graduate or someone new to the industry, you're looking at it like, is this the right opportunity for me? Or is this where I want to be? This is where I want to be, and it's how do I get there? And it can be quite difficult. So it's wonderful to hear how you got to where you are now, because I think that's what we want to hear at this stage of our lives, like the different journeys, so that you can almost relate to it, or see the point that you are in someone else's story. I think is really good for that kind of, you're not alone.
Yeah, you're not at all. And also I think you need to decide. I mean, I've never I've never done really high level jobs. I managed staff twice and I didn't like it. So I decided that wasn't for me. I just wanted a job I liked. I didn't want to manage a team of 30 people. Some people love it and absolutely thrive on it. But one of the first jobs I did, I had two team members who I inherited. I didn't employ them. And I didn't know they absolutely hated each other. So when I used to be out of the office, they'd physically fight on the floor. And it was just so unprofessional. At one point, I had to take them into a room and sort them out, and I was shaking. So I decided that wasn't for me. So as you go through, you'll discover what you like and what you don't like. And don't do something you don't like for the money, because it will make you miserable. So and everybody's different. Some people want to go straight to the top and the big salary is what they want. Great. But everybody has their own wants and their own way that they want to live their life, and be true to yourself. And
Amazing.
there's no rights or wrong ways. It's just what's right for you. Don't ever feel pressured that you should be doing this or you should be doing that, or I've been there 3 years, I must move on. I've known people who've stayed in the same, the opposite to what I said earlier. There are some people who've stayed in the same job for many, many years because it just suits them. But just be you. Do what suits you. There's no prescribed way or success looks like this. It's what it looks like for you, I think, is important to understand.
Absolutely. I think there's so many key points to take away there. Thank you so much. Next question we have is kind of been covered already, but if there's anything else you want to add, it's where has your path taken you so far? So we've kind of covered, I guess, your events journey, but I know something we've not covered is your voiceover acting.
Oh yeah.
So that's another journey.
Yes, it is. And always learn, keep learning. So when I saw that question, what I was thinking was, in terms of the world, this industry has taken me all over the world. So I've been to Japan, I've been to China, I've been everywhere, all over the US, all over Europe, and I like to travel, so that suited me really, really well. I've seen parts of the world on business I would never have gone to personally. So in terms of literally where's it taken me, everywhere, and places I'll never forget and experiences I'll never have. But the other side is always have a balance in your life. So work isn't everything. One of the things with the events business is it can be all consuming. It's often long hours. It's not a 9 to 5 job. It might be in certain ways. You've got your admin time, depending on what role you do and what organization you choose to work for. You'll have times where it's just all admin. And then you'll have times where you're traveling nonstop, or you're working crazy hours, or you're doing, 5 or 6 back-to-back 14, 16 hours days. Your feet are killing you. You think, why am I doing this? And then it's finished and you miss it. And it's kind of, it's a bit cyclical in that way. And I've now completely forgotten what's going. Oh, sorry, you said voiceover. So I think you should always learn and do new things. So when you get to a point, this is just same old, learn something different. So I got the opportunity with the current job to do some voiceovers for Visit Scotland. They did an internal audition. They wanted somebody to be the voice of an internal video. It was never going to be seen by anyone. And most people went, oh, I hate the sound of my own voice. And I thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting. So I auditioned, got the gig. And then the first day that I sat in the recording studio in Leith and put the headphones on, I was like, oh, this is fun. So decided to go for it and try and have sort of another freelance income because of that. But I then discovered, probably just as well I didn't know at the beginning, it's a really, really tough business. But what COVID has given me, and working from home, I've always been in offices before, is I've kind of had time and all the learnings on Zoom, and it's all, I can do it in the evenings. I've had a mentor in Hollywood, I've had a coach down in Bath, and I can sort of fit it in and around my day job. And so last week I did a job for STV for COP26. I've recorded an audiobook. I'm in a game. I've just been cast in a film, and I'm going to be filming down in Galloway in August. So I just put my 3 weeks holiday in for that. That is terrifying because I'm not an actress. But you just got to go for it. Don't be afraid of things. What's the worst that could happen? You look stupid? I'm quite used to that, so it's fine. But, so I guess my message is, always push yourself. If you start to get to a point where you think, oh, I can do that standing on my head, there's no challenge it anymore, maybe do something else as well. Naomi does event grads. There's always something. You don't have to. It's not everybody's thing. But I had the time over the last year and just wanted to explore, could this go somewhere? Could I do it? And it's been great fun. So the audiobook was, I had to do I had to be 15 or 16 different voices and different accents. So I was a wolf, 11 different witches, all different age groups. I had to play a granny, a young girl, whatever. I didn't know I could do it. So just always do new things, always stretch yourself. If you like singing, if you like sport, keep pursuing it. Do it alongside your job. It shouldn't all be about work, because as we've all found with COVID, I mean, our industry hasn't been working for at least a year and a half, really. When you've got time, do something with it. And that's not to say if you don't, you're lazy. That's not the case at all. But take the opportunities when things come up. If something appeals to you, don't be afraid. Don't think, oh, I couldn't do that. Give it a go. What's the worst that could happen?
Amazing. I think that's one of those things, like, especially in university or college or anything, you're always told to go out there and get experience and grab any opportunity. And I think it's something that's not actually I've thought of before. It's even during your career, you can jump at opportunities, because that variety is what we're in the industry for. And if we're starting to find that we don't have that variety anymore, your balance can be in a different way. Balance could be, instead of, well, work life is very important, but it could be also work and something that takes your mind off work, but it gives you that variety so that you can enjoy both.
Yeah. So to answer Cameron's question, at the moment it's fun because I'm at home and my studio is upstairs. So if I get a voice job, I just nip upstairs, do a quick warm up and up I go. But if I have, like when I was doing the audiobook, I was actually having to go into a studio to do it. So I was taking half days. So I juggle my annual leave and can I do it in the evenings? Can I do it at the weekends? So I've done a bit of audio drama, and that's usually recording in the evenings. So that's fine. Or I'm maybe joining a table read, and because everything's on Zoom, you can be truly international. So there was one I did recently, and people were from all over the world, and you just have to hit the right time zone where everybody's available. And then you're all doing, you're all sort of acting in the same place, and then you all record your lines afterwards and send them in to the engineer who puts it all together. So at the moment, it's fine. Once we're office based, it's not going to be easy. So I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is yet. Choices will have to be made. But at the moment, there's no way I could do that as a full-time job. I'd have to market myself really heavily, which I haven't actually done yet. But during COVID times, it's possible.
That's a really good point. And the end question there from Cameron, has Visit Scotland been supportive? Do you have advice in that kind of way where, I guess with voiceovering, is that the phrase? Starting at Visit Scotland, I guess that's a little, maybe a different scenario to others, but for those who are maybe having to take it to a new job.
I think it depends. This has been a bit, sorry, I missed that bit of your question, Cameron. This has been a bit different because I've done most of the Visit Scotland voiceovers in the last year because all the studios are shut. So they've been using me because I'm an in-house resource. They don't pay me for it. But so it's worked both ways. I've had the experience of doing it for them, and they've benefited because they can keep producing content with voiceover because I'm here to do it for them. If it was a different role in a different company, one, it depends on who your employer is, and two, it depends on does it impact your job. I think that those are the two things. If it's something that suits your job, so for example, doing the mentoring where I mentor Naomi. That's something Visit Scotland encourage anyway. So that's something I'm choosing to do. It's nothing to do with my job, but they very happily give me the time to do that within the working day if that's how it worked out. Sometimes Naomi and I meet out with that time. Sometimes we've Zoomed within the working day. So they're fine with that. If it relates to the industry, they're fine. So I think with any other scenario, I know people who get up at 5 a.m. to do their freelance stuff, or they work late into the evening. It depends what it is. It depends what you're having to do. If it comes to a point where you're having to split, you have to be in two places at once, that's when it doesn't work. It has to somehow work alongside. So it depends what it is you do for your day job and what it is you're looking to do for your freelance work. Most you can juggle up to a point.
Absolutely. I think post-COVID is going to be a bit different for those maybe starting in COVID, because it's going to be a very different way of life again, isn't it?
When you're back in the office, it's hard to do your freelance admin.
Yeah, that's very true. That's the thing. Excellent. So the next kind of question we have is, what is your favorite part about working in business events? And you've spoken about the clients and the people orientated, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
For me, it's always been about the teams. So not only the teams I've worked in, but it's the people content, because you tend to work hard. Like I said earlier, you work hard, play hard. They're not jobs where you just rock up, go away for lunch on your own. You're with people all the time. They're relationship jobs. People buy from people in a sales perspective, and to deliver an event, you have got to work as a team. Nobody works on their own. If you don't work with other people, you're not going to work in events. So for me, the joy has been and still is in my current team. I love the people I work with. They're hilarious. And I basically want a job where I can have a laugh. If I can go into work and laugh every day, which I have in many of the jobs I've done. I'm a real giggler, and I've often gravitated to teams where everybody else giggles as well, to the point where you get into trouble. But it's just about having fun. You work hard, but you enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point? So really, for me, it is people. And the job I did in London, that very first one, so that's about 30 years ago. I'm still in touch with that, with mainly girls, a couple of guys. We still get together every couple of years. We all have a WhatsApp group still, all these years later, because it was such a kind of bonding experience. We were all young. We were all first jobs in the industry. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were going these amazing trips together. So we got to know each other really, really well, more than you would if you worked in a bank or, whatever, you worked in another kind of sector. When you travel with people, you do tend to get to know them really, really well. There's no kind of hiding your personal life or what you're doing. You do tend to have quite a good bond with people. And I've had that everywhere I've worked when I've worked for venues. And if you're entertaining clients and you're doing dinners and you're doing fam trips and stuff, you get to know your clients really well as well. So there's a couple of clients I've probably worked with for about 20 years. I know them really well. I've met their other halves. You kind of know a lot about each other's lives. And I like that about the industry. It's not just what do you want? Right, I sold you that. It's relationships. You get to know people. And I've always enjoyed that side of it. And so the client side and your own team side. And wider, because you don't, especially with these kind of roles like convention bureaus, venue, Visit Scotland, you never work just your own organisation. To bring any event in is working with partners, working with other suppliers, and every time it's different. You're working with different people. So it's never dull. It's never the same, we're doing the same thing again and the same thing again. It changes every time. And that's what I like about it. It's never the same. So it doesn't get boring.
Amazing. I love that. And the next question then, what does a typical day look like in your role?
Well, at the moment, it's sitting here every day. But normally, so if we go back to pre-COVID times, like 2019, I was barely at home. So I travelled non-stop. It might have been a big trade show where we're taking partners. We have a big Visit Scotland stand. We go as Team Scotland. We'll take venues with us, DMCs. We take a piper. We'll have a ceilidh on the stand, that sort of thing. So you're working with not only the clients that are there, but your own team and the wider Scotland team. It might be going to a destination to do presentations to an invited audience for an event we're putting on. Trying to think what we did that year. Went to Paris, we did a space event to a particular audience. So there's events that we're organising ourselves. There's events we're doing in conjunction with partners. There's really big trade shows we're going to. And there's like a season, if you like, in the events world where there's trade shows from sort of April to November that are spaced out, and that's quite a big part of your diary. So you've got all your planning pre that, making your client appointments, doing the appointments when you're there, having the experience of being at the show, then all the follow-up afterwards. So as I said, every event has a beginning, a middle and an end, if you like. All your following up, putting it on the system. What else did we do that year? We do quite a lot of sector events. So I do maybe a panel event, so I'll invite speakers and we'll do something with an audience in a particular area. So if it's a sector message we're taking to the regions of Scotland. So for example, although I think it was before 2019, I did one at one point. I like the creative side, you might have noticed. So I always volunteer to do those ones and work within that sector. And so we did one on, I think, I can't remember what it's called. Wasn't publishing, Innovate Literature. So we went to Wigton Book Festival and I had a panel of speakers and I was introducing it, moderating it. And then one of my speakers is actually the girl who's written this film that I'm now starring in. So, you never know where opportunities come from. And that's how I met her. And then somebody else worked with the early years books in Scotland. And it was all about innovation. What was innovative within publishing? And then I have my colleague from Visit Scotland who works in film and literature tourism. And she talked about the effect of literature and why visitors come because they want to see where their authors lived or where they set the books and wrote. And they're really interesting topics. So we had a really good audience for that one. So we might be doing something regional, we might be doing something international. You might be part of another event that's taking place in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, Aberdeen, the main conventions cities. So you're working with different people, so it's never typical. You've got your big trade events in your diary. You've got the events that you're organising that you plan out well in advance. And the balancing is you start your diary at the beginning of the year. You know when the big things are in, the big trade shows, because they're the same dates every year, and then you work your own events around where you want that audience. Does it tie in with another event? In which case you'll work in partnership with them. So there was another event called Expo North, which takes place, well, it's digital at the moment, but it takes place in Inverness every year, and that's a big creative event. We did a film event with them. So timing wise, I would organise that to happen when that event took place, and then book a session and then organise my speakers and stuff for that. So, and then you just kind of work back, and then other things just appear, other opportunities will come up. So we touched earlier, and I actually forgot to mention, so organisations like Visit Britain, IAPCO, MPI, all of the other bodies, they'll do events, and sometimes we'll work in conjunction with them. PCMA we're closely aligned with, which is a US-based company, but it's the biggest number of event organisers in the world. So I don't personally work with them, but two of my colleagues do. So if they've got a series of events, we might be talking at one, or doing a presentation, or doing a panel session, that sort of thing. And then there is just things that come up and you go, yeah, that's a good opportunity. Have we got the budget? Yes, we'll do it. And for this time at the moment during COVID, when pretty much everything's online, we are probably supporting more events, more locally grown events. So there's one coming up just in a couple of weeks. I think it's on the 10th of June, which is called EIE. I should remember exactly what it stands for. It's Engage, Ignite. No, I'm not going to pretend. I'll have to follow up afterwards. But it's EIE. It's about entrepreneurs. So it's entrepreneurs in Scotland, and they have an event. It's a bit like a Dragon's Den scenario, in that local entrepreneurs can apply to be part of the programme. They get mentored for a year, and then they get put up in front of dragons with money, essentially. That's a very layman's way of explaining it. But on the day, they do their pitch in front of people who can provide money to help their businesses grow. And it's run for about 10 years. It came out of Edinburgh University through the Bayes Centre. And they're struggling for the last 2 years because it's now virtual and they can't make money on it. So we've given them a little bit of sponsorship. And one of my challenges today, just saying about what's your job. That's it. That's the one. Well done. It's a great event, actually. You should sign up and go. It's really interesting. Great companies that go as part of it. But I had to build my virtual booth, and IT is not my strength. So I had to do the whole on my own team call this morning. Go, oh, I really can't do this. Can somebody help me? And they all know, fine. I just want somebody to do it for me because I can't do it. I can go to the event. I can talk to the clients. That's my strength. But the actual making my logo fit the box and getting the video to go into that slot is not my strength at all. So I have two colleagues go, oh, here we go. She'll just be asking us to do it for her. And I said, well, my deadline's tomorrow. I need it done. So I need to actually chase somebody tomorrow to make sure it's done. Otherwise, we may not have a booth at that event. Sorry, I'm going off at tangents. So we might be, we might be supporting events like that, which it's an opportunity. We know the client. We've known them for years. They're struggling. We can help. We will help.
Amazing. Cameron's got a question, but I'm going to, if you don't mind, Cameron, wait till we've gone through just a little bit more in case people have to leave. But the next kind of question we have is, what are the key skills required for your job role? And you mentioned a couple there, which were great. And it was actually really refreshing to hear, that, you're not a virtual pro, because you're hearing a lot of virtual experts out there. And it's hard, or you're less likely maybe to hear of people's, is weaknesses the right phrase? Not the right phrase. But those areas that you're not so expert on. And as a young person coming into the industry, it can feel that we don't have enough, or, a weakness is a weakness, but really it's not. It just means you're stronger elsewhere. So I'd love to know what you think the key skills are required for your job role.
I would say be aware of your weaknesses. There's nothing wrong with knowing what you're good and bad at, because if you don't know, then you're going to let yourself down. It's much better to go, actually, I'm not very good at that. Can you either show me how to do it or help me, or can I go on a course and learn? And if it's something like me, I'm not great at technical stuff because I'm not really that interested. So my colleagues know, fine, I just want them to do it for me. But I do learn and I do try and get better, because it's not fair to ask other people to do it for you. But being aware of what you're good at and what you're not, I think is actually a strength, because then you know how best to work with other people. And also things I can help them with that they're not so good at. Or my boss probably to give you an example is the easiest way to do it. My boss at one point wanted us all to be able to do everything. And the guy I sit next to when we were in the office just said to me, look, I hate doing that and you love doing that. You hate doing that and I love doing that. Let's just, no matter what you ask us, we'll just do that between us. And that's what we've done for the last 3 years. So he doesn't do the bits he doesn't want to do, and I don't do the bits I don't want to do, and everybody's happy. And our boss hasn't quite cottoned on, and that's what happens. So I hope he doesn't watch this recording. So no, you need to be aware. And I think for this industry, what I do as a role, the soft skills are actually really important. So if you can't talk to people, and not everybody can, this kind of work isn't probably for you. You have to, the best training somebody said to me at one point is you must use 2 ears and 1 mouth, which is what I'm not doing tonight. But when you're with a client, when I do my job, when you have a meeting, when you research, when you look at something, a lot of my job is research, figuring something out before I'd say anything or approach anyone. Because if you don't know what you're talking about, people don't trust you and they don't take you seriously. So some of my job is not scientific, but I do have to be really good at my research. And that's something I've developed over a long time. But you have to be able to listen and actually understand what they want, not what they're telling you. So you've got to figure out what they actually need, because what you're always trying to do is get to the win-win. If you're dealing with a client, whatever they want, whoever they are and whatever they want, they've got an agenda, they've got something they want to achieve. So have you. So the best way, the times I've been most successful is we've gone, right, if I do that, you can get that, everybody's happy. And everybody is happy, and everybody gets what they want out of the deal. And it's not always what you started off with. You've got to be adaptable. You've got to listen and find solutions. So I think the tips I would say is always have the ability or learn to put yourself in the other person's shoes. See it from their perspective. All of your clients are they're having to go back to shareholders or their CEO or whatever it is. You find out what they need to achieve and you help them achieve it. You've won that business. Or you've a much better chance of winning that if you go, that's what I can do for you, take it or leave it. It doesn't work. You've got to work with people. And often some of the big contracts I've won in the past, I mean, contracts are like £1 million. It's when you got to stalemate and you thought, oh, this isn't going well. And then you just sit with them and have a cup of coffee and you just figure out what they actually is motivating them. And then you don't say it out loud, but you just you just come up with a solution, you present it, and they go, okay. And then you've got the deal. So you've got to have those soft skills. You've got to reflect back. You've got to understand and give them what they want without it being really obvious. It's a bit more subtle than that. I think that's a really good skill. You've got to be able to think on your feet. Things happen, things go wrong. From a venue perspective, I've done many, many show rounds and many kind of different venues. Always rehearse, always be prepared, never wing it, not with a client. When they come in and everything's got, I mean, I've done terrible things where I've tripped and fell flat my face in front of people and all sorts of things. So I learned always plan. You make it look effortless, but actually half an hour before they come in, you went round, you walked the route, you checked there wasn't 3 hoovers sitting out, or you whatever it is. You know the champagne's in that room, so you walk in and the guy's there with it on the, we used to, at the ICC, we used to talk about wowing people. And one of my colleagues and I were quite competitive. It was like, right, who can wow the client the best? So we would, somebody comes in, they think they're just having a bog standard show round, and you're talking, as I said before, £1 million worth of business. It's a big deal. So you're doing your show round as normal. You've walked the route. You know who's there. You've got different staff ready at different points. You take them onto the main stage. At the EICC, I don't know if any of you have been in it in Edinburgh, they have the revolving theatres. You sit them in, you revolve them round. And on the stage, there's dry ice or there's somebody with a tray of champagne. And you just see that client's face and they go, oh, that's what you want people to think when you do a show round. So you're prepared and you surprise people and you anticipate their needs and you exceed those expectations. And that helps you win the business. And it's fun. When you get that reaction from people, it's great. When you don't, you think, oh, well, never mind.
That's amazing. I think that's really practical advice as well. That's really we can take a lot from...
Walk the route, do it yourself first. Make sure you know that the room that you can do your keys working, that, I've done it before where I've rocked up and I've worked hotels and you can't get into the hotel room. Mm-hmm. And then you realise you've got the wrong key, you've got to go back to reception. It looks terrible when you're trailing a couple of clients behind you. And always check with reception that they've blocked the rooms off, because it's happened to me before. One of the worst ones I ever did was I was too busy. Somebody spoke to me before I went to do a show round. I didn't do my check. And then I had 2 clients behind me with a big contract to spend money on. and I walked into this room and I thought I had checked it. So I didn't do the housekeeping. I just walked in, naked guy in the room. He just checked in and take his clothes off. Not only he looked stupid, but I was mortified. And then we never got that contract. You know, you look unprofessional. So always prepare. That's one of the things I've learned, probably for doing it wrong quite often. I have many stories like that, but I'll save them another time. But everybody who's worked in venues has many stories. But basically, I learned do your homework, double check, trust nobody, double check everything. If other staff are helping you, make sure you've briefed them, make sure they know what they're doing, make sure you're working with people who won't let you down.
Amazing. That's honestly, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you learn so much from those mistakes, and I think or not mistakes as such, or even just issues that you could never predicted almost in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I realize time is going on quicker than we imagined, and as long as you are okay, Fiona, and you have the time, we can continue for a wee while if you're all right. But if anyone does have any questions, please do pop them in and we can answer them shortly. The next kind of question I have then, which might lead on to some questions being sent into the chat, but what advice would you give to anyone wanting to work in this area? And again, it's things that have been covered, but I wonder if you have anything specific.
I think if you decide this side of the business is for you, just give it a go. Apply for a job on this side and try it out. Ask questions, be interested, and you'll soon know. Go with your gut feeling. You'll know whether it's for you or not. You'll know whether working for venues is for you, or working with an agency, or working with somebody that organises actually takes the clients around, does incentive trips, goes with the groups. There's so many different roles you can decide to go down. Just give them a go. If it doesn't work out, just get another job. Difficult at the moment, granted, but generally speaking, the market was quite buoyant, and it will be again. It will pick up. And all the time I've worked in the industry, it's always, this is the biggest challenge, but it has been cyclical. There have been challenges and things, and people said, oh, it'll never recover, and it always does. So don't lose heart and don't lose hope. The training that you've had, the jobs that you've maybe done so far, you've banked all of that. That information, that knowledge stays with you, and then you'll just build on it. So if you fancy going into this side of things, just give it a go and see if you like it. And if you don't, it doesn't matter. It's still a good experience. You've still met people, you've made contacts. Everybody you come across in the industry is a contact, and they'll be useful. You might be useful to them, and they might be useful to you in the future. Nothing's ever wasted. You always learn something. If it was a disaster, you've learned something. I've had a couple. There's a couple not on my CV that I just knew it wasn't for me. And that's what happens. But you just go for something that is. And when you find the one that is, you will love it. You'll appreciate it.
Absolutely. Those bad experiences are really what helps you niche down and realize what it is you want to do. And I think that is a huge skill in itself almost, isn't it? Being able to realize this is where I'm meant to be and where I can thrive, which is really important. Amazing. So talking about some jobs not being on your CV, what has been the most difficult part of your career so far?
I think probably taking the jobs that I thought, oh, I know I shouldn't have taken that, and I did it and it wasn't right. But then you move on, so it doesn't matter. What would be the other thing? I think I got made redundant once and I was traumatized by it, but now it happens all the time. It's really nothing. At the time, it was quite it didn't look good on your CV and stuff, but it was just hotels just used to get rid of whole gangs of people, and it was a job I really loved with colleagues I really had a laugh with. And one of my colleagues thought, I'm going to just really miss this guy. And so we then applied for the same place together, but he got the job and I didn't. So yeah, that was hard. But then, I got something else and it was equally as much fun. And things are what you make them. They are what you make them, I think. It's what attitude you have and you bring into it. And you'll either click with the people there or you won't. And there's always the good, the bad and the ugly. And you don't have to like all of your colleagues. As long as you can work with them, it's fine. There's the ones you're more drawn to that you have more in common with, and there's ones that are just fine as colleagues, and that's fine too.
Amazing.
And they won't all like you either, and that's also fine.
I think that can be quite hard though, can't it? Especially when you kind of you realize that you're not all I think they can get a little bit like nervous and anxious around certain people, and I think and vice versa as well. Have you had that in the past then? Have you kind of worked around that?
Yeah, to be honest, you just get used to it. I mean, I think I've worked with so many people over so many years, and some people are keepers, and some you're like, see ya. It doesn't. That's just what the industry's like. It doesn't matter. It's not in any way. It's no reflection on them or on you. It's just some people you're more connected to than others, and that's life anyway. No, it's fine. I mean, there's some people I haven't seen since I worked with them, recently or maybe a year or so ago. Yeah, exactly, Daisy. So it's just that's what it's like in life. It's the same in jobs. You don't expect everybody to like you and don't expect that you will like everybody. It doesn't really work that way. But it doesn't matter. It's not a problem as long as everybody does their job. It's fine.
Amazing. So the last question we have here then, and then we can hop onto Cameron's, or if anyone else again has any, please do pop them in. But what has been your career highlight then, the biggest and the best?
I think one of my main ones was working at the EICC. That pre-opening, those years were amazing. We had a year, I think maybe 2 years of pre-opening build-up, and then we opened the venue, and then we had a royal opening, and then there was all these amazing high-profile events. So the Commonwealth Heads of Government, we're going way back to about 95, 96, I think. But the Commonwealth Heads of Government were held in Edinburgh. So there was the Queen, Nelson Mandela. It was a total roll call of all these amazing people. And you knew it was special. You just knew it was special. Like clients that I was working with would come in and go, oh, which hat will I wear? And like, put that on the cloak, put that one on. The excitement was amazing. And watching those events, the protocol, the sniffer dogs coming in, all of the police presence, those really high profile events, they're fascinating to be part of. And then I went in the huff because we all had training about, if you did meet the Queen, how you were to address her. And I can't even remember what they told us, but it was something, we went to have training and it was like you say, ma'am rhymes with jam. And I got fed up with it all because I've not got great patience. And I was like, well, I'm not interested in meeting the Queen anyway. So I got put on the back door for the latecomers. And then on the day, I was like, oh, it's all happening around the front and I'm stuck on the back door. So it was entirely my own fault. It was my choice. And I should just have said, yes, I'd love to meet the Queen, thanks. So things like that, these high profile ones are just exciting. They're great. So I think those have been highlights. And we did some lovely events at the EICC. There was another one we did for the Tattoo one year when it was the previous CEO. And he brought in, we were doing a private event for clients. So we were hosting. And then there was this, it was like a mini tattoo in one of the rooms in the EICC. And it was just electric, the atmosphere. And you were meeting these incredible, Princess Anne was there. There was loads of dignitaries, and again it was quite special. Everybody's really dressed up. It's black, they're all black tie occasions, and there's just something about those kind of events that they don't happen every day, and they're quite special. So I would say those are the things I remember the most. But I think the events that I've loved the most have been probably a bit more ordinary. Like one of my favorites was the European Space Agency was one of my clients, and they did a big I can't remember the name of it now. It was like an Earth conference. So they were observing Earth from what am I trying to say? From the atmosphere. And that's what all the researchers and whatever brought together. And we got really well with the client. It was an Italian client. And myself and the events girl got to know her really well. So we got invited to the dinner. We got invited to the drinks. And you're with all these amazing scientists and space people. And you're like, oh, it just blows your mind. It's great. And I've never taken that for granted. I've always felt that was a real privilege to be part of those worlds. Or other events, I've been up and talked. I did a welcome speech to the people working in the Arctic Circle and all the researchers up there up in Oban, and you're speaking to these people who've come from all over. There's Texans there, and you, at the end of the day, we're all just people. But that international feeling in your city is really special, and I've always enjoyed that. I thought that was quite a special thing to be part of, which has been great. So I'm glad I've had those opportunities.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter where you are and where you go and where they're from. We're all human, and a sense of humour gets you quite well. If anything happens, just crack them. I'm not very good at jokes, but just say something to make them smile, and then they relax. You can watch somebody relax, and it's great. And it doesn't matter who that person is in front of you. They might be the CEO, they might be the cleaner, they might be whatever. If you can put them at ease and make them relax, you've done your job well. And that's what I used to like doing. I used to like the difficult clients where I don't have so much client facing in my current role, but if a difficult client come in and they come in like this, well, I don't want to come here. I want to go to Bologna, or whatever it was. They were the best ones when you won them over and you won the business because you knew they didn't want to come. So it was the ultimate challenge.
Amazing.
So they were good fun.
Amazing. Do you know what? And everything just sounds so rewarding as well. And all of those experiences that you've kind of explained there, they all sound really rewarding. You've put, so much into each one. You've got the most out of each one as well. I think plan an event, it doesn't just end at, oh, I've planned this event and this is it. Like, you're there on the day, and you're getting, again, that legacy at the end of it, and you're getting to maintain and keep up these conversations and these relationships. So I just think it's really rewarding, even hearing you speak about them. You can see the passion.
And quite often, I'd quite often have like a 4-year build up with a client. So we'd win the bid, then it would happen. I would kind of hand it on to my events team, and then at the end of the event, we would have a drink reception with them in the boardroom to say thank you for their business. That's where I would trot back out again, always with the champagne, and then we'd say thank you, and we would give them the value of the business they brought to the city. And a lot of them were really blown away. They'd no idea of what the value of what they had done, what we'd all worked with together, what the financial value of it was. And I think so that it used to all be about the money. Now it's as much about what the topic is, what the sector is, what's happening, and what the benefits could be to them and their organisations and to us in Scotland, which I think is more, it's as important. It's as important. It's not just about how much money you're bringing in. It is about, whatever your topic is, what will that lead to? One of my favourite clients is a client called SPIE, SPIE, which is, they work in phonetics. No, I've said the wrong word. It's optical. They do glass. Guess the topic. Is it phonetics? No, that's hearing, isn't it?
I think that's spelling.
They make lenses anyway, so they do lenses for like astronomical thing, telescopes, that sort of thing, and they also do, yes, thank you, it's optics. And they're a really amazing organisation based in the US, and the current CEO is from St Andrews. He's a Scot. And I've worked with that client for a long, long time. They've held many events in Scotland. We kind of get more out of them. And they're just, what the work they're doing is incredible. And they're very into legacy. They're very into working with local community. So they were very approachable to say, right, if you're coming here, what are we going to do this time? And they do outreach programs and whatever. So I might be dealing with somebody on an outreach going, we're doing this, can you help us? Can you give us a speaker? Can you do whatever? And it's that reciprocal arrangement is really valuable. And the guy coming from, he's not lived in St Andrews for years. He's been in the States for a long, long time. But he kind of feels he's bringing his event home a little bit as well. And that was quite special. But only because he knows we'll do a good job for him and look after their organisation. So that's rewarding. That's fun.
Absolutely.
Or for me, it is. Maybe not for me, but I've enjoyed that side of the business.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting to hear from your perspective as well. So yeah, moving on to Cameron's question then. Sorry, Cameron, I feel like I've been keeping you this whole time. But I think you said it was in two parts. So going back to Visit Scotland and Event Scotland, how do you manage working with long-term bidding or planning cycles with staff moving on? And do you ever decide not to bid for an event a second or third time if it's not been particularly successful? In terms of it's a long question. It's two parts. So we start with the first one, Cameron, sorry. So yeah, how do you manage working with long-term bidding planning cycles with staff moving on?
Staff moving on doesn't really make a difference because it will come back up with just who's next in the role. So it doesn't matter. So for example, probably more of an EICC example than my current role, because probably easier to explain. So clients that I worked with at EICC, when I left, I handed those clients over to the person who took my job. But then I'm still involved with them from my current role, because we did at one point have the funding pot is gone, it hasn't been replenished. It might post-COVID, but we had a pot of money. So I would still be working with some of those same clients, but from my new organisation. And it has happened before where I think I was at EICC the first time, dealt with IBM and a really big, I used to do corporate stuff on a big conference. And then the next time that client wanted to come back, I was working for a visitor attraction doing dinner venues. Somebody else she'd worked with somewhere else was now doing my job at the EICC. Everybody does move around, that's normal. And somebody else on the original team was working somewhere else. So in the end, she was going to come back to the same city and work with the same people, but they were all in different jobs. So it doesn't matter, as long as everyone's connected, the information about the client, about the event, stays with the venue or whoever started sourcing it, and it just comes back up when the timing is right, and the current team will work on it. So it doesn't, the staffing side doesn't really come into play. It kind of just moves on, and it can be the same on the client side. It might not be the same actual client. They might have moved on and somebody else has taken their role. So quite a lot of the job is figuring out who's where and who's doing what. And what was the second part of your question? Sorry, I'm trying to find it in the chat.
Don't worry. So the next one is, do you ever decide not to bid for an event a second or third time if it's not been particularly successful in terms of legacy first time round, and where does the decision lie?
Yeah, it comes back to the one actually piece of the puzzle I forgot to mention was you often have to have a local ambassador. So for a lot of the association events, you can't actually bid unless you've got a local expert in that field. So for which example I'll give you? So trying to think, there was a World Water Congress. I think we did in bid for it in 2012. I think it happened in 2016. So the ambassador at the time was a guy who worked for Scottish Government, but he was in the water department. And we won it because he was the local expert. He wanted to do it. We wanted to do it as a city. So we all combined forces, put the bid together between the Convention Bureau, the venue, and the ambassador, and we won the event. When that same event went to come back, or we rebid again, although it was successful, I think maybe 4 years ago they tried it again, weren't successful, but the client was a different person and the ambassador was a different person. Somebody else had taken that role and it didn't work. And then, this is probably confidential, but it might be coming back sometime soon in the future, look out for the press, but it's different people. It's the same event. What doesn't change is that that event happened at a certain time in its history and was really successful when it came to Scotland. So it may come back in a few years' time, but it doesn't have to be the same people. As long as the information is contained within all of these bodies, so the convention bureaus that are involved, the venues that are involved, everybody keeps the info on the client, and that still gets used by whoever's in post at the time, if that answers your question. So although the relationships are really strong with the people, everybody moves. The venue people move and the clients move. And it's about keeping up your CRM system or whatever is being used to make sure that the information on the client, the dates, what might be the right time to bid, because they work cyclically. So some international events will only rotate in Europe. Some will go worldwide. So they might not come back to Europe for another 10 years, 20 years. If they only meet every 4 years, some meet every year, some meet every 2 years, some meet every 4 years. They're all different. So that's why I was saying earlier, there's a lot of research. You've kind of got to work out where they are on their cycle of events, where they've been before. Some never go back to the same place. Some like to go back to the same place. There's a lot of work goes on in the background to figure out what's the right fit. And I always used to explain it by saying, and when the planets align, when the timing is right, you've got to have the ambassador at a certain position in their career. You've got to have either not been for a while. There's lots involved. It's quite a complicated process.
It sounds like a complicated process, and it's great to kind of get that insight as well into that process. So what I'm going to do now, in case unless anyone else has any like kind of last minute questions, I was thinking we can kind of round it up on the recording so that everyone who is going to be watching on demand can catch up, and it's not too long, because I feel like we could talk forever. But I can't thank you enough, Fiona, for your time this evening and for sharing your experience with us. It's been really wonderful to hear not only your own background, but that kind of advice that has stemmed from that experience that you can now share with us at the kind of beginning of our career. So thank you so much for joining us on the Mentor series.
My pleasure. Just remember, there's no wrong ways. How you will approach the industry and the jobs you do will be what's right for you. And basically have fun with it. You know, it's work, so it shouldn't feel like work. It should be something you enjoy doing.
Absolutely. I think that's a great place to end that there. And for anyone who does want to stay on, and if you have any other further questions, please do. But thank you for joining us this evening. It's been really wonderful to chat to you all.
Great to meet you all. Thanks so much for coming.